Today, we're looking at the story of a 59-year-old with $2.8 million saved who still can't retire. And we'll explore what's really holding them back and the steps they're taking to finally move forward. Over my years of helping high net worth clients navigate early retirement with substantial portfolios, I've discovered having significant wealth doesn't automatically translate to retirement readiness when psychological and practical barriers create hesitation. That's exactly why I'm making this video today, to show you the real obstacles that can prevent retirement even with substantial savings, and the steps needed to overcome them and transition to retirement confidently. You'd think that with $2.8 million saved, retiring at 59 would be an easy decision, but not for Sarah, who we'll be taking a closer look at today. I see this all the time, people with more than enough saved up who still can't bring themselves to retire. Over the years, I've found that there are three types of people who struggle to make that transition. And it's worth asking if you might be one of these three. The first one is the overspender. Their lifestyle grows right alongside their wealth. Every raise, bonus, or market gain turns into a new expense, keeping them stuck in the cycle of just one more year, because deep down, they know their current lifestyle won't sustain itself once those paychecks stop. Then there's the second one, the scarcity thinker. They could have twice as much as they'll already need, and it still won't feel like enough. And they're constantly running numbers and worrying about every what-if scenario that could derail their plan. And finally, the identity keeper. Their work defines them, and without it, they feel lost. Retirement isn't a financial problem for them, it's an emotional one. So where does Sarah fit in with these identities? And before I share her story, I've adjusted a few details to protect her privacy. What matters most here are the circumstances and the conversations behind them. As I walk through her situation, I'll point out a few themes that might resonate with you, the same ones that many of my clients are working through right now. So Sarah is a 59-year-old physician who has $2.8 million in retirement and investment savings over nearly 3 decades in private practice. A single mother of 2 daughters, she's done an exceptional job managing her finances despite the personal and professional challenges she's faced. Yet, she still feels stuck when it comes to retiring. Her sense of purpose has always been rooted in her work and her caring for others. With her daughters now grown, Sarah struggles to envision a life where she isn't needed by patients or her daughters. Even with financial security, she worries about her own health and fears becoming a burden to the 2 daughters she's already worked so hard to support. Sarah's story reflects 2 of the most common barriers to retirement, the scarcity thinker and the identity keeper. She knows that the $2.8 million is a significant nest egg, yet she still worries it's not enough if health issues arise in the future. And because her purpose has always been from helping others, the idea of stepping away feels less like freedom and more like losing who she is. So let's discuss how we work through this together and go to our interactive software. It allowed her to put in all her financial data so we could review it together. As we see here, Sarah is 59 years old with 2 girls, Hannah and Renee. What I wanted to show her first is what would happen to her financial plan if she in fact retired right now. Is there enough money? What if those worst case scenarios happen? What if they didn't? Should she downsize? Let's start building out a plan to answer if those decades of work can sustain your lifestyle at this moment in time. So we started with consolidating her accounts and taking a look at how she was invested. What we see here is a simplified view of her taxable and retirement accounts along with her primary home in Long Island, New York. And I will say, part of our work was simplifying her accounts, which meant consolidating and making them easier to track. We see that she has $1 million in a taxable account, $1.8 million in her retirement accounts, and a $1.9 million home with $500,000 left on her mortgage that she refinanced 4 years ago. So while she has $2.8 million in investments, her net worth is over $4 million. But before we could answer those earlier questions, we have to fill in how she wanted to spend her money in retirement. So we broke down how she spent money now, so at least she had a baseline. Because remember, she hasn't really started thinking about retirement yet. We started to identify what was really important to her. And what we discovered is that taking care of family was amongst the highest priority for her, and you can see that right in her line items. Part of the mentality of not being able to retire is that she is squarely in the sandwich generation. You can see that she is paying for her daughter's education and going to med school, and at the same time sending money back home to Korea for her parents. So part of her scarcity thinking actually comes from other people depending on her and those perceived unknown of those costs. How long will she need to support her parents? What if she has to pay more for her daughter's continuing education? Then we also spoke about her living expenses. Included in there, we see around $7,000 per month after she paid the mortgage. This includes her annual trip home to visit her parents, which were non-negotiable. We also factored in her Social Security, estimated at around $40,000 per year. When we ran the projections, even after accounting for all those expenses, she could comfortably retire today and still have more than enough to last. So we circled back to that real question, why can't she retire? For Sarah, part of it stemmed from years of paying high college costs for her daughters and still not being done. So she felt obligated to keep working rather than tap into her savings. The other part was emotional. She simply wasn't ready to step away from a career that had defined her for so long. So even though the plan showed she was financially ready to retire, the real question was, did she really want to? And so we asked, what if she didn't stop working entirely, but just shifted gears a bit? Maybe take on fewer patients, free up more time for her hobbies, and see how that new rhythm felt. We started mapping that out, and the increase in green showed how much additional flexibility she'd have compared to retiring right now. Because the truth is, retirement isn't always about stopping work. It's about redefining who you're going to be. It's okay to not want to give that up right away. The bigger challenge is discovering who you are outside of that work identity, especially if your life has revolved around it for decades. That's why easing into retirement with part-time work can be such a powerful transition, especially for someone like Sarah, who's a doctor and has that ability in much ways that other people don't. But it does give you time to test out what that could potentially be and to start building a new sense of purpose on your own terms. But we also have to remember one of Sarah's big concerns, not wanting to be a burden to her kids. So we built in a what-if scenario to account for potential long-term care costs down the road. And while that did impact her plan, her portfolio is still projected to be able to withstand a fairly large consistent outflow for those needs. In other words, even in that scenario, she could comfortably afford to pay care out of her own pocket without jeopardizing her long-term security. Another question Sarah had was whether to pay off her mortgage. She'd refinanced a few years earlier at a great rate. But with her daughters now out of the house, she was also thinking about downsizing. We ran a what-if scenario to help her visualize not having a mortgage, since the idea of carrying debt without income just didn't feel comfortable for her. And that's an important thing to think about. Sometimes the best decision isn't about maximizing returns or arbitraging low interest rates. Sometimes it's simply about peace of mind. Paying off your mortgage guarantees that you can be debt-free, and that freedom can make it easier to take on a little bit more risk elsewhere. So for Sarah, we mapped out a plan to pay it off in 6 years as she transitions fully out of work. Even with the low rate, seeing that path gave her confidence and clarity about what the next phase could really look like. It also got rid of a huge expense. We also thought about what it meant to downsize her home into something smaller. This would unlock more capital for her to use as well. We discussed that if she was going to downsize, we should probably not pay off the mortgage earlier, because that would involve selling securities and paying long-term capital gains on her stocks to accomplish that goal. So there is a bit of timing nuance here in that discussion, but that's okay. We didn't need to decide right now. We just wanted to map it out so that we could see what each scenario looked like. So for Sarah, this wasn't about forcing her to retire. It was about showing her that she could. It gave her permission to start thinking beyond work and to imagine what the next chapter of her life could look like. It was also a reminder of everything she's built. What was all of this money for, if not to enjoy it? At some point, the question shifts from, do I have enough, to, am I allowing myself to enjoy what I've worked so hard for? And this is what I encourage all of my clients to start thinking about as they enter into their mid to late 50s. So if you feel like you're in a similar situation to Sarah, where you have substantial money saved up, but can't seem to make the retirement transition, click on that link in the description of the video and let's explore that conversation together. This is a no-pressure meeting where we just get to talk about what's on your mind for retirement. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.